Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Iconic. I'm here with Jeffrey Bowyer-Chapman. Jeffrey, how are you doing today?
I am spectacular, Danny. How are you?
I'm okay. You know, it's such a loaded question these days. I feel like there's no right way to answer that, how you're doing. But I'm excited to chat with you. I've been a fan. I watched all of UnReal. I loved UnReal. So I'm excited to chat with you. And now you're on Canada's Drag Race. You're one of the main judges. How's that feel? How's that going?
I mean, well, we finished filming a few months ago, so just that fact alone is pretty epic given the current circumstances of the world. We're so blessed to have completed the entire season. They completed post-production and all of the editing and everything remotely, but we have this like incredible gift to present to the world to hopefully help people get through their summer indoors.
Right. Now, were you a fan of reality TV before, sort of UnReal and now Drag Race? Like, did you watch any of it?
No. I actually started watching Drag Race while I was on UnReal, and that only came from, for people who don't know, UnReal is a dark comedy about behind the scenes of a reality show similar to The Bachelor. It was created by a producer from The Bachelor. So in preparation for that show, I spent a lot of time with reality show producers and watching different reality shows. And I saw that the common theme between the majority of them was that they're all extraordinarily fabricated, scripted, produced. The characters or cast members or competitors or whatever you want to call them are all, for the most part, playing caricatures of themselves. There's not really any depth or authenticity. And Drag Race was the one exception to that rule. It was where authenticity and vulnerability is celebrated. And the only way to not only steal the hearts of the judges and of the audience, but to snatch that crown at the end of the day is to show the truth of who you are.
And Drag Race has become such a phenomenon, and I wonder, it's really crossed boundaries, I think, outside of the LGBTQ community. I know so many straight friends that watch it and love it. And what do you think it is about the show that really catches people?
We're fucking fabulous.
Right.
What is there not to love?
Facts are facts.
I mean, what is there not to love about the show? I mean, it's an incredible display of artistry and incredibly talented performers. I think that drag queens, from the heteronormative perspective, don't really get a lot of respect, the respect that they deserve. Drag queens are truly some of the hardest working, most incredibly talented individuals in the entertainment industry, in the game. They're hairstylists, they're makeup artists, they're comedians, they're actors, they're improv artists, they're costume designers, they're dancers and choreographers, they're singers. Like, they do it all. And to have a platform like Drag Race where all of their skills can be showcased and celebrated and queer people can be awarded for it, I mean, it's just, what is there not to like?
Is the Canada version, is it the same setup, same rules, everything as RuPaul's Drag Race?
You're going to have to wait and see, girl. But yes, I think that the general rule is, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it's a formula that works. There's everything that Drag Race fans worldwide have come to know and love about the show. You'll definitely get those elements in Canada's Drag Race as well, with a little side of Canadian bacon and maple syrup too.
I'm just thinking, who was your favorite? I mean, you've been on the U.S. Drag Race quite a bit. Is there someone that you were especially excited to work alongside or judge alongside? I think, is Deborah Cox in the new? Did I see that in the trailer? Like, is there one person who you're like, holy shit, like, I can't believe I got to sit next to them or hang out with them a bit?
There's not anyone in particular that I couldn't believe that I was sitting next to and judging with. But the person that I was most grateful to be sitting next to and judging with was, out of our celebrity guest hosts, was Michelle Visage. She was the one who I sat next to for my first episodes judging on RuPaul's Drag Race. She is somebody who created a safe space for me to be myself. She encouraged me. She gave me so much advice and guidance from the first time that I sat on the judges panel with her in season 9 of RuPaul's Drag Race. I learned my judging style from her. I learned the importance of giving thoughtful, concise critiques to the queens that will help develop them into being more well-rounded individuals and artists being as real and straight as you possibly can while coming from a place of love. I think Michelle and I are very similar in the way that we operate in the world in that respect. So Michelle, it was such a full circle moment having her come onto the set of Canada's Drag Race with us.
One of the most exciting things about Drag Race is it sort of opened the doors to all these other shows about drag queens and really putting them in the forefront of their own stories. You know, I loved We're Here on HBO, and there's been a lot of stories. And so I think that's been one of the kind of fun things that has come from the success of Drag Race. Or have you been watching any of the other shows that have?
I think that We're Here is very possibly the most important show on television. It's incredible. It's the essence and the energy of Drag Race mixed with Queer Eye, mixed with Oprah. Like it's everything that we need and then some. It's a breaking down of the damaging narratives that the status quo has forced upon us for centuries and centuries. Of that of the patriarchy and toxic masculinity, homophobia, xenophobia, transphobia. It kind of breaks down all of those falsities and like allows us an opportunity to tell a new story that's healthier and more inclusive. And it's extraordinary. I cry every single episode of We're Here. I think it's so brilliant. I cannot wait for season 2.
I also love that it's so beautifully produced, and it seems like they put a lot of money behind it too, which is it's wonderful. I want to go back to UnReal a bit. Now, The Bachelor was just in the news. They finally have a Black Bachelor, and on UnReal, UnReal's based on or sort of about a Bachelor type show. And in season 2, I believe you guys had like a Black suitor, and it's shocking to me that season aired so long ago, and now we're finally just getting a Black Bachelor, and it seemed. The announcement of it seems so disingenuous to me just because it came at such a strange time. It wasn't announced in the traditional way that they had always done. It seemed like a direct response to the criticism that they've been getting, but seemed to be at a boiling point. And I'm curious, like, what's your take on that? Were you following any of that?
I mean, I don't follow it closely because it's not really pertinent to it doesn't really have any influence in my life. But I agree I partly agree with what you said, but what doesn't strike me is I wasn't shocked by it. I wasn't shocked that it took so long for The Bachelor or for ABC to have the wherewithal to cast a Black Bachelor. I don't really know how to put it other than the world that we live in is set up to center the stories of straight cisgendered white people, and those are the people who are lauded as our heroes and our protagonists and our saviors, and what is deemed Eurocentric beauty standards or what is aspirational, and nothing else lives up to that. And it's the story that's been told for decades and centuries, and it's the narrative that we've all falsely accepted to be true. And it's one that's just been perpetuated again and again and again in media and television and film and in pop art across the board. It's what is deemed as the standard, as the status quo. So I agree with you. I think that it was very disingenuous and that they were pressured into it. And I'm not going to sit around and complain about it. It's a good first step, but is it enough? No, it's not. I mean, something else that they could do would be, like instead of just casting The Bachelor and kind of having us as Black people as the front of your show to help perpetuate the facade of allyship. It's like, do the real work, like educate yourselves and start hiring Black executives and Black interns and promoting Black people and queer people from within your company. Like, you can talk the talk, but girl, we need to see you walk that walk.
Right. It'll be interesting to see what comes next with all of these companies. I think a lot of larger organizations, I feel like they were coming out within the past couple of weeks and making these statements. And it's like, I want to know what's going to happen a year from now, what's going to happen 6 months from now. And I don't know.
I want to be able to say, I own 51% of this guy.
Now, Jeffrey, I got to be honest. Like when I was first preparing to talk to you, I was excited to talk about kind of reality TV, Drag Race, and all that stuff. But then I was listening to your podcast, and you go really deep into a lot of serious issues. Your podcast is called JBC Conversations with Others. And if you don't mind, I'd love to dig a little deeper into your own life and some of the things you talked about. One of the things that really struck me that you talked about, and feel free to tell me to fuck off if you don't want to talk about it, but you had mentioned your eating disorder. And I had found that so fascinating because I feel like men in particular, that's still a very taboo topic amongst men, amongst gay men. I very rarely hear it talked about anywhere. Can you share a little bit of your story? Do you mind?
Yeah. I don't even know where to begin with it. I did discuss it. I discussed it in, I believe, in the conversation with Karamo Brown that you're referencing. Talking about my history with disordered eating isn't taboo to me, and it's never been taboo to me. It's just that I was never. I didn't have the vocabulary or a safe space in which I was able to properly articulate what it was that I was experiencing, because so many men, Black men, queer men, cisgendered straight men, don't talk about it. It's anorexia nervosa was something that I started struggling with from the age of 15 years old. It was only perpetuated through the next 10 years of my life as I was working as a model, trying to fit myself into a mold that is so strict and regimented, and one that I could never fit into and do not fit into. And in me striving to fit into the norms of what is deemed acceptable based on Eurocentric beauty standards, I did everything I could. I starved myself. I really abused my body and compromised my self-worth and integrity in order to try to be accepted. Truly, at the end of the day, is what I was striving for, was just affirmation, acknowledgement, acceptance, and to be able to walk through this world and this industry with the same level of ease and acceptance as so many of my straight white counterparts did. And I had so little control over my own life and my own career as a child. As children, we don't really have agency. We're kind of just told where to go, what to do. We're kind of picked up and placed in certain environments that we may not want to be in, but we don't really have much choice over that. So I took control over the one thing that I could take control over, and that was my body. And it's something that I have healed over the years through conversation with friends, through speaking about it publicly and very honestly, through working with an organization called Project Heal, which is a disordered eating rehabilitation program. We Rise LA, which is a mental health organization here in Los Angeles, has been very helpful in allowing a platform and a space for me to be able to start conversations about it and to allow others to share their stories as well. But it's an ongoing battle. I mean, I've relapsed many times. I didn't know. I didn't have the terminology to know that that's what it was, me relapsing. Every time that my life would begin to spin out of control, it's the default that I would go to, starving myself. And, truly at the end of the day, it just came down to finding some sort of healing and solace and resolution in it. It always comes down to beginning from within. It sounds so cliche, but it's like what Ru says: if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else? I wasn't loving myself. And every time that I relapsed or went off the rails, it was because I was ignoring myself. I wasn't taking the time to nourish myself and perform acts of self-love. I wasn't meditating. I wasn't journaling. I wasn't doing yoga. I wasn't eating foods that were nourishing me. I wasn't having honest conversations with my friends and family about what it was that I was experiencing. I've learned that disordered eating is a vicious cycle, and it comes in many different forms, but all of us are going to be taking many different paths to get to the end destination, which is that of recovery. But the way to get there can only be achieved by coming back home to yourself and getting really true with who you are, what you want, how you're feeling, and what you need in order to find a sense of self-love, self-acceptance, and groundedness.
Just hearing you speak right now and on your podcast, you are so confidently able to discuss the parts of you that other people, I believe, would find hard to discuss, whether it be disordered eating, mental health. I talk a lot about mental health on this podcast. And what I always tend to hear from other people is they have trouble even just talking about it with a close friend, sort of off camera or off air, or just at the dinner table. And were you always able to just sort of talk about these things? Because it's rare, it's rare, it's rare.
So much of it, I think, comes from my childhood. I was adopted and raised in small town Canada, and raised by an entirely white family. And as much as I love my family, they're all quite waspy, and they don't really express their feelings. They don't really tell the truth of what is going on in the world immediately around them. If they have issues with each other, they talk about it. They talk about it.
Around it.
They talk around it, but they never address the issue with the person who they have the issue with. And that was something that drove me nuts as a kid. It drove me crazy, because I was like, do y'all not see issues that you were causing by just not communicating and telling the truth and like facing these things head on? It's only making it that much worse. It's only adding to the toxic environment. Like, what is wrong with you people? I could see it from such a young age. So it was just like ingrained in me to not be that, it was just so easy for me to see. And it's something that I apply every day to my relationship, to my friendships, to my family, to interacting with the queens on set of Canada's Drag Race. It's like, tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth. It's so much, it's just so much more satisfying at the end of the day. It's how we find true connection. It's how we evolve personally, individually, collectively. Communication is the key to everything, I think. So it's something that not only am I not afraid of, but I can't live without it. I feel like I will explode if I don't tell the truth of my own being.
Right. My family's very similar in the fact that they'll sweep everything under the rug, and it's like put on the facade and we're all happy, everything's great. And I felt like especially when I came out of the closet to my parents, I remember that day, and I remember like leaving the house and being like, I can't lie anymore. Like I just want to everything that's going on with me emotionally inside. It's like, I need to at least get it out, almost to a fault sometimes. Cause I feel like sometimes I annoy people. I'm like, Danny's talking again about how he's feeling.
I've had to learn to find balance, through therapy. My therapist often says to me, like, Jeffrey, that I wholeheartedly agree with your message. It's the approach that needs a little bit of work, like finding some grace in that. So I'm learning.
Right. It's also good to have a professional to talk to. I think it's so important because at least for me, before I had a professional to talk to, it was like I was just burdening my friends constantly. And so it's good to have someone to talk to. But what advice would you give someone who's maybe dealing with something internally, whether it be anxiety, depression, mental health, who doesn't have the strength to kind of talk to someone close to them or to reach out to a professional? Is there anything you would leave them with?
Don't be afraid. The fear of reaching out to talk to a mental health professional, whether that be a therapist or a counselor or your friends or whoever it may be, the fear of that for myself at least, was so much worse and so much more debilitating than the actual act of expressing the truth of my reality, as painful as that may have been. It was more freeing than the self-imposed prison that I was keeping myself in by not allowing my truth to be heard. And something that is as you discovered in that conversation I had on my podcast with Karamo Brown, was that when you speak the truths of who you are, more often than not, you're going to have somebody look you in the eye and say, oh my God, me too. I feel the same way. I've been through the same thing. And even if they can't get it or they don't know your exact experience, we as a collective consciousness have like a level of empathy that allows us to be able to, we may not be able to be in the shoes of the other, but we can at least imagine what that's like. And we can at least offer, a pathway from my heart to yours to try to allow you to express your heart. I would also say, don't be afraid of asking for help, but also don't be afraid of admitting that we are flawed and we are traumatized, and some of us may feel broken. And I think there's so much stigma around mental health and, medication, antidepressants. I mean, so often it's a matter of chemical imbalance in our brains, and we can do all the work in the world to keep ourselves balanced. We can be going to therapy and exercising and having the tough conversations and journaling and doing all the things that you know that you need to do in order to keep yourself as balanced as you possibly can, and it's still not quite there. It's not always going to be the case, but something that I've learned over the years is taking the stigma away from mental health is necessary in order to find mental balance. And it's in the same sense that the narrative that we've been told around heterosexual, cisgendered whiteness being the norm, that being the healthy thing to strive for, it's just not true. So the same stigma that we have around mental health and therapy, psychotherapists, antidepressants, all of those things, those stories just aren't true. So as long as we can start to learn and put those falsities to the side, you'll find a path to healing.
I thought it was interesting too. You mentioned finding medication and journaling and doing all of those things. And I also just think it does take. What do you?
Did you say meditation or medication?
Both. But I just want to add that it does take a lot of work to kind of find the right, for lack of a better term, the right cocktail that works for you in terms of working with your mental health. Because for some people, it might be something like meditation. Some people, it might be medication. Some people, it might be a mix of both. And it does take a lot of work. I think sometimes people who aren't as versed in mental health, they think, well, if they go to a therapist one time, they'll be healed. And oftentimes, I think it takes finding the right therapist. Sometimes, I don't know, at least for me, it's like I'm going to 3 different people before someone you like, or, someone that you work well with. So I don't know. I just wanted to add that.
I agree wholeheartedly. It's like you have to date your therapist. RuPaul and I talk about that. We actually talk about that in, I think it was the last time that I was on What's the Tea? We have a full discussion about that, about having to date around to find a therapist that you are compatible with. There's nothing wrong with it.
Has there been anything on your podcast that you've been hesitant to talk about, or have you just been completely an open book?
Yeah. I mean, I am an open book on the podcast, but I'm hesitant to talk about everything because it's always scary, but it's always worth it in the end to talk about it. I did a bonus episode with a friend of mine who's a mental health counselor just about a month ago about white fragility and the white gaze of white gay men and the fetishization of people of color, specifically Black men, Hispanic men, Asian men, by white gay men, the power structure, the racial dynamics in the gay community that are very real. Being in an emotionally abusive relationship with somebody who emotionally abused me and fetishized me and objectified me and appropriated Blackness. And those are tough conversations to have. It's like, I lived in such shame about allowing myself to be in a situation like that for so long that I didn't know how to talk about it. But I think that with the current world that we're living in this quote unquote enlightenment or moment of awakening, now is the time to be having these incredibly challenging conversations and to not hold back.
I listened to that episode, and I wonder if you could touch on the power structure you mentioned within the gay community. What's been your experience? And I know you went into it deeper on your show. I wonder if you could touch on it a bit.
Well, it's racism. It's plain and simple is what it comes down to. White gay men may have experienced oppression or trauma, but at the end of the day, they're white men. And white men reign supreme, and not only in this country, but in this world. It's the way that the world has been set up for centuries and centuries. I mean, white Europeans spread across this globe and raped entire continents and shoved the story of the Bible down different tribes and cultures' throats and punished and murdered anybody who chose to believe differently and erased the history of the gender spectrum and of the sexuality spectrum. And so, I mean, that's where it all begins. And then it only plays into the LGBTQ community because, during in the 1960s, during the civil rights movement, many people had to make a choice. It was at the same time that the women's liberation movement was going on. So many white women chose to follow the feminist path of the women's liberation movement while leaving black women in the dust to focus on the civil rights movement. And that's where the Great Divide, really happened in terms of the LGBTQ community, I think. And so we see it all around us. I mean, we see it from every major queer organization that exists. The majority of the executives and the presidents and the boards are all white gay men. These Karamo and I talk about it in that episode. Every gala and award show we go to, the room is filled with white gay men. I mean, you see it. You see it from everything from dating apps to, I don't know, to porn, to media. Black men are objectified. Everybody wants BBC, but nobody wants to bring the black person who's attached to that BBC home to their families. Like it's this. It's just, I don't even know how to explain it because it's not something that I subscribe to. It's not something that I perpetuate. I just know that it's something that I experience and have experienced time and time and time again. And it's very insidious and it comes in many different forms. And, in my relationship, it wasn't just about objectifying and fetishizing blackness, but it was like this bizarre
relationship. I just want to stop you. The relationship you're talking about, you do go into specifics with the bonus episode you did with your friend who's in mental health.
Yeah, correct. So, in that relationship, it wasn't just about fetishization of me, but it was like this obsession with blackness. He was a white gay man who works for the Kardashians, and we all know their obsession with blackness and their appropriation of blackness, their fetishization of blackness, their abuse of blackness, and how they are all transforming themselves into blackness. I mean, like physically, very, just from them staining their skin darker colors with spray tans to making their lips bigger, their tits bigger, their asses bigger, their, whatever it may be. I mean, he did the same. He literally started to transform before my very eyes into somebody who now people look at him and ask him, like people have asked me, like, is he biracial? And it's like, nah, bitch, he ain't biracial. He just went to the Kardashians' doctors. Like, are they biracial? Like, it's so deeply fucked up on so many different levels. Like I said, I don't know how to explain it because it's not something that is an issue for me personally, but it's something that exists. And it's something that is not only accepted, but it's like applauded and sought after. Like you see it in the followings of the Kardashians. You see that all of these young, impressionable boys and girls all around the world, like look to them as the new standard of beauty and aspire to that. But it's like, the reality is it's like, girl, they don't look like that. That ain't, and we all know this. Like we all know that. Right. We've seen their transformation in front of our very eyes. We've seen how horrible and offensive and damaging it is, and yet we still give them a pass and allow them to do it. So it only created the pathway for my ex-partner to be able to do the same and like think that it was acceptable and that he could get away with it. And the reality is that he is getting away with it. They're all getting away with it, but like at what cost?
Right.
The cost is at the expense of us as Black people.
Now, when you were in that relationship, were you aware of these things, or was it something that you just sort of like stuffed away?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. I mean, and once again, people can reference the episode where I talk about it in much more in depth. But it was a negative. We all follow negative patterns from childhood. We all fall into cycles. We go to what's familiar, even if what's familiar is damaging or abusive or traumatic. And that was the cycle that I fell into. I fell into the cycle of being with a white man who loved me, but was also my oppressor. It's the same thing as like my stepfather and every authority figure in my life growing up. Were all straight white men who claimed to love me, but oppressed me at the same time. So it was this familiar energy that I was drawn to. And I was aware of it, but only as aware of it as you can be when you're like this close to it. It's only now that I'm coming out of it that I have a broader perspective on it. And it was friends. It was friends who would say to me like, he's starting to look more and more like you, is what some people would say. And I would have to take a look back and be like, oh shit. Oh my God, that's so twisted. You're right. Like,
Yeah.
Getting injections on his jawline and his lips bigger and his skin darker with spray tan. And like, it's just like, oh my God, you're right. How do I not see this? How do I not see how twisted this is? But it's the same thing that the Kardashians do. So.
I mean, a lot of times I think when you're in something, it's like you just don't. I don't know. At least with me, I feel like hindsight's 2020, and it does take me taking a step away from any situation. Anyway, Jeffrey, I found your podcast so incredibly fascinating. You're having so many conversations that are important to have, and also just very interesting and fun. And I think it's fantastic. It's called JBC Conversations with Others. So I encourage everyone to check it out.
Thanks. It's JBC Presents Conversations with Others.
Right. Now, this is a hard shift, but I have a few questions, a few like lightning round sort of questions that I ask everyone. So I'm just going to throw these out. The pop culture.
Let's do it.
Do you have a favorite movie?
I have a couple of favorite movies. Paris is Burning is like one that I will just have like on repeat again and again and again. And Frances Ha. I don't know if anybody's really that. It's Greta Gerwig's film with Noah Baumbach, and I love it so much. It's very mumblecore, set in New York, black and white. Like it's like Woody Allen-esque without having the problematic nature of being Woody.
I fell asleep in that movie in a theater once, but I appreciate that you love it.
I love it.
What's your favorite Mariah Carey song?
All I Want for Christmas Is You.
Classic. Yeah. Did you have an AOL screen name like back in the day?
Didn't. No, I was on MySpace, but that's
Did you have a MySpace song like that?
Definitely. I think that my what was it? La Tigra Hot Topic, I think was.
Oh my God. Take me back.
Yeah.
If you were choosing for People Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive, who would you choose?
God. I don't have celebrity crushes. That's the thing. I really don't. I never really have.
That's a good thing.
I don't. Yeah. Who do I think is the sexiest man alive? Man, what's your answer?
I mean, Idris Elba was just I think he was like last year's choice. I find him very sexy. Chris Hemsworth.
One of the many blandly handsome Chris's, just throwing like generically handsome.
You could win it too, Jeffrey. You could win that. We'll give you the title too. Look at that smile.
Dude, you know what? I'm gonna give this one to Brooklyn Heights. Brooklyn Heights.
Oh my God.
Brooklyn Heights is so gorgeous. She's so
stunning.
So beautiful, in drag, out of drag, but as cheesy as it may sound, I'm always drawn to somebody's internal beauty, and Brooklyn's one of the most beautiful people on the inside that I know.
And a fellow judge on Canada's Drag Race. Canadian Drag Race. Speaking of, if you were lip syncing for your life, is there a song that you would absolutely win with? Like, is there something that you would absolutely win if you were lip syncing to this song?
This one's so problematic. It's so problematic, but
tell me.
212 by Azalea Banks. It's not the song that's problematic, it's her.
Sure.
But goddamn, I love any like female rap songs, but specifically, even more specifically, like female rappers from the 90s and early noughts. Like, give me some like Left Eye, give me some Missy Misdemeanor Elliott, give me some MC Light. Like, that's my jam.
Jeffrey, where can people find you on social media? Where can they find Drag Race? Tell me everything. Plug everything.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jeffrey B. Chapman. You can find my podcast, JBC Presents Conversations with Others, on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Canada's Drag Race premieres July 2nd on Crave and Out TV in Canada, on the WOW Presents Plus app in the United States of America, on BBC Three in the UK, and on Stan in Australia.
All over. Jeffrey, thank you so much, and thank you for chatting and getting a little bit deeper with me. I encourage everyone to go listen to your podcast. It's so many fascinating conversations. I was honestly obsessed with it. So thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks for having me. This was so much fun.
This was great. Thank you.
Bye.
I appreciate it.